Chapter 8 Monstrous teacher. Who are you? I panted fiercely as he let out a low growl. Are you going to surrender or not? Surrender my ass. Let me go. Wang Dong flew into a rage and forcefully struggled against Hua Yuao's grip. However, Hua Yuao was using all of his strength to restrain him, and had even incorporated his soul force. Under the circumstances, and considering that he couldn't use his martial soul, escaping wasn't easy for him at all. Are you still not admitting your loss? If I'd used a blade earlier, you'd already be dead. Hua Yuao didn't show any weaknesses at all as he let out a low roar. At that moment, while his body was in close contact to Wang Dong's, he found out that Wang Dong's body wasn't only extremely soft, but was also quite elastic. Furthermore, it even had a sort of gentle feeling to it. His body was also unexpectedly releasing a faintly fresh aroma that smelled extremely nice. After hearing his words, Wang Dong was stunned. His resistance against Hua Yuao's grip instantly decreased. He was right. The stabbing pain in his head and his previous dizziness hadn't lasted long earlier, but since the two of them had been so close, Hua Yuao would have definitely had enough time to hurt him if he'd wanted to. I've lost. Quickly get off me, Wang Dong said angrily. His eyes were filled with a look of hate and denial. However, Hua Yuao didn't release him. Instead, he coldly replied, the 5 conditions that you previously set out something that I'm unwilling to do. However, I'm not doing it because of your threats, but because of the respect I have for a roommate. I know that you're stronger than me, and that I definitely wouldn't be your match if we were both to use our martial souls. However, remember this, if you dare to humiliate me again, then even if I'm beaten to death by you, I'll definitely make sure you pay the price. When he saw Hua Yuao's increasing viciousness, which got to the point that felt like he was looking into the eyes of a bloodthirsty soul beast, the hate in Wang Dong's eyes dissipated. What replaced it was a slightly dismayed look. In the field of strength, Hua Yuao was clearly a lot weaker than him, but in the field of imposingness, he'd completely lost. Hua Yuao slowly released Wang Dong and stood up. While facing Wang Dong, he retreated a few steps. Then, he turned around and headed back towards their dorm room. Wang Dong sat dazedly on the ground for a while, before finally standing up again. Then, he slowly walked towards their dorm room as well. When he arrived at the dorm's main entrance, the voice of an old man echoed out, "You have indeed lost. Not just in battle, but even your heart is lost. Why?" Wang Dong suddenly turned around to gaze at the old man. With an unresigned look on his face, he replied, "I'm clearly stronger than him. If I were to really fight against him, he wouldn't have even been able to touch me. In which way did he achieve victory over me?" The old man pointed towards his own heart. On the basis of this, he has a fearless heart, while you lack one. Not being afraid of death isn't something that just anyone can do. Wang Dong was stunned. After a while, he bowed deeply towards the old man. "Grandpa, thank you for your advice." After speaking, he walked towards the dorm room with large strides. Upon his return to the dorm room, Wang Dong saw Hua Yuao, who'd already begun to meditate on his wooden bed. He wanted to say something, but in the end, he held it in. After letting out a snort, he made his bed. Compared to Hua Yuao's poverty-stricken conditions, Wang Dong's bed was set up with a thick fur mattress that had been made from the fur of some unknown soul beast. It looked big and soft. Furthermore, he even had a soft quilt. His luggage had already filled the wardrobe beside him, but there were still many things left out on his table. Wang Dong seemed to be too lazy to finish unpacking, instead pulling the quilt over his head to sleep with feeling of injustice. Over the following 2 days, Hua Yuao and Wang Dong minded their own business, and did their own things without bothering one another. The thing that astonished Wang Dong the most was that Hua Yuao seemed to be in a cultivation state at all times, except for when he was eating. He could faintly sense the strength of Hua Yuao's soul force, but the more he sensed it, the more incredulous he felt. Just by relying on his strength, how was able to beat me? The admission period for new students finally ended, and the freshman dormitory also became lively. Although the rooms weren't big, they could still fit 2 people in them. It was very noisy outside, but the soundproofing abilities of the dorm rooms were very good. Hua Yuao had been cultivating incessantly during these past few days. His previous fight with Wang Dong had inspired him quite a bit. The reason that he'd previously been able to overcome his opponent, and was able to achieve victory, was because he'd relied on the skill that the Sky Dream Iceworm had given him after awakening. Iceworms truly weren't very strong soul beasts. The 4 soul skills that the million-year Sky Dream Iceworm had bestowed on Hua Yuao weren't very strong either. They were, respectively, spiritual detection, spiritual sharing, spiritual interference, and spirit shock. Hua Yuao was relatively more skilled with the first 2 skills, and had already verified their impressiveness with Bei Bei. On the other hand, spiritual interference was a domain-type skill that could interfere with all living creatures inside a 15-meter radius of Hua Yuao. It would produce spiritual undulations. However, the strength of its interference wasn't high. With his current level of cultivation, the most he could do was make people turn absent-minded for a moment. Furthermore, he wasn't even able to maintain the skill for a full 3 seconds. The soul force consumption was much higher than his previous 2 skills. Spirit shock was the only skill among the 4 that had even a tiny bit of attack power. Since it was a single target skill, the strength of its attack was slightly stronger than the domain-type spiritual interference. However, it wasn't much stronger than it either. The reason that Hua Yuao had been able to overcome Wang Dong and achieve victory in that fight was because he combined spirit shock with his purple demon eyes. The combined effect of the 2 was even better than he'd imagined. Naturally, this was also because Wang Dong hadn't been able to put up any defenses due to the sudden nature of the attack. If he'd made any preparations, the strength of his spirit shock would have been heavily reduced. However, no matter what way you put it, Hua Yuao finally had the basic requirements to become a control-type soul master by relying with these 4 spiritual-type skills. However, his eldest senior brother had previously told him that new students wouldn't be separated into departments during their first year. Everything could be done after he'd survived their first year. "Oi, class starts today. Are you still going to sit there like a fool?" Wang Dong's voice roused Hua Yuao from his pondering state. He'd just returned from his breakfast, and was planning to cultivate for a while. "Class is starting." Hua Yuao asked subconsciously. This was their first conversation after their fight. Wang Dong didn't even look at him as he indifferently replied, "There's still an hour left." "Oh." After Hua Yuao responded, he shut his eyes and began to meditate. After his hard work during these few days, his familiarity with the mysterious heaven technique had increased a bit. An hour was enough for him to circulate the mysterious heaven technique through an entire cycle, which would allow his soul force to improve by a small step. Wang Dong didn't even listen to his reply. When he turned back to look at Hua Yuao, he discovered that he'd actually started to meditate again, causing him to involuntarily murmur to himself, "Truly a lunatic." When he finished speaking, he left the dorm room without even looking back. During these past 2 days, he'd never seen Hua Yuao lie down to sleep. The large gates of the white teaching area were opened wide, and the new students who were now wearing white-colored school uniforms walked inside in single file. Everyone's clothing had the symbol of a small green monster on their left breast pocket, which was the symbol of Shrek Academy. Students from different year groups had uniforms of different colors. They had uniforms that were the same color as their teaching areas. As Hua Yuao rushed towards the new students' teaching area, he was just in time to hear the ringing of the bell. He rapidly rushed inside and saw the sign for class 1 on the first room to the left on the first floor, causing him to immediately dash inside without any hesitation. At that moment, the spacious classroom had already been filled with people. Because Hua Yuao arrived at the last moment, the number of seats left for him to choose from were very little. He barely managed to find a seat with great difficulty. His desk mate was a relatively pretty young lady. However, this young lady's appearance was somewhat similar to Wang Dong's when he first met him. She had a haughty look on her face when she raised her head, and didn't even spare him a glance. Hua Yuao only managed to observe the surrounding situation after he'd sat down. The classroom was very large. There were a full 100 people who were in the same class as him. Following the idea that there were roughly 1,000 freshman students, there should be roughly 10 freshman classes or so. He quickly found Wang Dong, simply because Wang Dong's looks were too outstanding. The people sitting around him were actually all girls, and none of them were weaker than the female student that sat beside Hua Yuao in terms of appearance. At that moment, a person walked in the classroom's door. It was an old lady with wrinkled skin and shriveled hair. Her grizzled hair had been rolled into a bun, and she wore serve white robes. Furthermore, her body's figure was average in size. The most unusual thing about her were her extremely bright eyes, which seemed to radiate light from her black pupils. Hua Yuao's martial soul was his spirit eyes. As a result of this, he was especially sensitive to the eyes of others. He could sense a strong level of spiritual suppression from this old woman's eyes. Even though the old woman was very old, her back was ramrod straight as she walked towards the speaking platform. There was no doubt about it. She was definitely the teacher of this freshman class. When they they saw the teacher enter, the previously disorderly class immediately quieted down, and their gazes all gathered on the speaking platform. The old woman's gaze calmly swept across the crowd from left to right, immediately causing everyone to feel her gaze raking over them, which in turn caused a formless pressure to appear in their hearts. I am Jo Yi, and I'm the teacher in charge of your class. I'm not sure how many of you will be able to keep up with me for the following year, but I have to tell you something. In my class, trash can't pass my assessments. I want to cultivate monsters, not idiots. Teacher Jo's voice had a kind of extremely unpleasant rasp to it. It resembled a broken gong. When they heard her words, an extremely angry look appeared on the faces of many students. They had passed the entrance assessment that enabled them to become students of Shrek Academy, and had been carefully selected from various countries on the continent. Amongst their peers, the word elite could absolutely be used to describe them. However, they had turned into trash and idiots under the words of this teacher Jo. However, Hua Yua was extremely calm. When he saw this teacher Jo, he recalled the words of his eldest senior brother and teacher Xiaoya. This teacher Jo was very strict, and had a bad temper, but she truly had ability. Those who've gotten into a fight during these past few days of enrollment, stand up. Jo Yi's following sentence stunned the entire class once again. They'd just been enrolled. Who would have the free time to start a fight in the academy? Even if they had fought, who'd admit to it? As the entire class remained silent, only a single person stood up. It was Hua Yua. He didn't stand up because he was honest, but because he faintly sensed that this teacher Jo wasn't a person who'd play her cards according to common sense. Seeing Hua Yua stand up, Wang Dong let out a humph. Not willing to be outdone, he also stood up. Of the entire class of 100 students, only 2 had stood up. They immediately became cranes in a flock of chickens as they became the focus of the entire class's attention. Only 2. Jo Yi raised her eyebrows. Truly a group of trash. Don't tell me you didn't know that not daring to provoke others is a sign of mediocrity. Other than these 2, everyone else go outside and run 100 laps around Shrek Plaza. Anyone who can't finish these 100 laps will be directly expelled. Once she spoke, the whole class flew into an uproar. This was only their first day of school, and class hadn't even begun yet. Who could accept the fact that they were actually being punished for not fighting? One of the students immediately stood up. Teacher, I refuse to accept this. Why do we have to be punished for not fighting? Jo Yi indifferently replied, because I said so. If you're not willing to accept this, you can screw off. As a teacher, I have the authority to expel any student I want. I'll give you 1 minute. If I don't see all of you running around Shrek Plaza within that minute, all of you will be expelled. As she spoke, a terrifying aura was suddenly released from her body. The powerful soul force undulations caused every single student to be choked by the pressure. Following that, soul rings started to rise from Jo Yi's feet. 2 yellow, 2 purple, and 2 black soul rings burst forth with a strong aura that was hard to describe. This teacher Jo was actually a soul emperor level expert, and furthermore, she had 2 10,000-year soul rings. If she wanted to take care of the 100 students in front of her, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that it would be as easy as turning her palm over. These students were only freshmen, after all. Under the strong pressure, just who would dare to resist? All of them dejectedly walked out the door. Jo Yi withdrew her soul rings after releasing them, and her eyes followed the students out of the classroom as she gazed at them expressionlessly. I'll give you a reminder. You only have 2 hours. After 2 hours, the people who haven't finished 100 laps will be considered to be unqualified. This is your first test after entering the academy, and those unqualified will be expelled. When they heard her words, the students' movements immediately sped up. They quickly ran to the field after leaving the classroom. Wang Dong was slightly astonished as he glanced at Hua Yua. At that moment, only the 2 of them were left in the class. Jo Yi's expression seemed to have become much warmer as she beckoned towards them. Wang Dong and Hua Yua walked towards her together. Looking at the 2 of them, Jo Yi nodded her head in a satisfied manner. Then, she said, not bad. At least 2 of you have some guts. Tell me, who did you fight with, and why did you fight with them? Wang Dong was just about to speak, but Hua Yua interjected, reporting to the teacher, we are roommates. We had a small conflict due to our opposing views. Jo Yi seemed to be very interested as she said, oh, you're even roommates. Fighting is good, but fighting between roommates is the best kind of fighting. You'll have competition this way, and you'll also be able to improve together. As they stood in front of Jo Yi, both Hua Yua or Wang Dong felt their backs become cool as their backs become covered in cold sweat. Just now, this teacher Jo had simply been too domineering. Furthermore, she really didn't play her cards according to common sense. Her way of thinking was entirely different from an ordinary person's. She was truly deserving of the title that Bei Bei had called her by, the Monstrous teacher. A trace of a smile that was even uglier than one's crying face appeared on Jo Yi's face. Her aged face even seemed to twitch. Fighting is a good thing, but I don't really like fighting amongst my own students. Remember, you should fight with students from other classes who want to start a fight. Our Shrek Academy's rules have always been relaxed, and this is for the sake of developing individuality within our students. Thus, we've always turned a blind eye towards the issue of fighting. However, there are certain limits to this, which I'll tell you about. Students from higher year groups aren't allowed to provoke or attack students from lower year groups. If we find out that someone has done this, the punishment is immediate expulsion. However, students from lower year groups can challenge older students, but this requires the presence of a teacher to ensure the fact that older students aren't simply bullying the younger students. As for students of the same year group, you can fight as you wish, as long as you don't cause any fatal wounds. The school won't interfere at all. Honestly, fighting is an exceptionally good way of increasing your strength. If you can reach your 2nd year, you can go to the soul dueling arena to fight. If you win a lot, the school will even reward you. However, for now, you 2 can go run outside with the others. Wang Dong was stunned. Teacher, didn't you say that we had guts? Jo Yi still had a smile on her face, but I never said that you wouldn't need to run. School has only just started, yet you've already fought with your roommate. You 2 really have future prospects. Thus, since you 2 have so many future prospects, the difficulty of your test should be harder than that of the others. Moreover, you 2 of you should share both delight and hardship with your fellow students. The amount of time you 2 have to finish those 100 laps will be the same as the others. Look, a moment has already passed while you 2 weren't being careful. Wang Dong still wanted to say something, but he was called away by Hua Yua, who didn't hesitate to turn around and run outside. Although Wang Dong felt somewhat depressed, he still followed Hua Yua out to run. What did you pull me away for? This teacher Jo is truly a lunatic. Hua Yua unhappily replied, can you beat her in a verbal battle? Can you beat her in a fight? If you can't do either of these things, and you still want to stay in Shrek Academy, then you'll have to follow her orders. Quickly run. I believe that her earlier words about expelling anyone who's unable to finish 100 laps aren't false at all. Shrek Plaza was right outside the freshman school building. It wasn't considered too big. A single lap was roughly 300 meters or so. To normal people, running 100 laps around the plaza was definitely not a simple task. However, to these young students who had the foundation of a soul master, it wasn't actually that hard. As long as they ran seriously, they'd managed to finish running their 100 laps within 2 hours. After Hua Yua and Wang Dong had joined the great army of running, many sounds of Schadenfreude immediately echoed out. However, the 2 people didn't even bother to care about them. They were already behind by 15 minutes, so they had to make the most of every minute that they had. Whilst running, Wang Dong suddenly asked Hua Yua, what skill did you use to beat me that day? I still haven't been able to figure it out. Could it be that your martial soul is a spiritual type martial soul? Hua Yua nodded. Wang Dong was stunned. It's really a spiritual type martial soul. No wonder I couldn't see what your martial soul was after you'd used your soul ring. At least my loss can't be considered too much of an injustice. Hua Yua felt slightly helpless as he replied, you're too arrogant. If you'd also used your martial soul, I would have definitely had no chance at all. I can sense that your soul force is much stronger than mine. Wang Dong was slightly pleased as he said, that's obvious. Amongst this year's freshmen, the number of students who can compare with me in terms of strength are as rare as phoenix feathers and Keelan horns. You merely have a single 10-year soul ring, thus you're naturally not my opponent. Hua Yua disliked Wang Dong's arrogant appearance. Don't forget that you just lost to that 10-year soul ring. Ugh. Wang Dong unhappily replied, I get it, let's not talk about this anymore. Seeing that you protected me in front of that perverted teacher, I'll consider the previous matter settled. In the future, I'll take care of you. If anyone wants to bully you, I'll protect you. Hua Yuao was left speechless. I don't need your protection. After saying this, he sped up his pace and ran forward. Wang Dong followed Hua Yuao as he sped up. The physical fitness of his body was much better than Hua Yuao's, so keeping up with his increase in speed was effortless to him. Wang Dong was slightly dissatisfied as he said, You're too unreasonable. Hua Yuao glared at him and replied, If you treat me as a student on equal terms, you wouldn't have to have this kind of feeling. Wang Dong curled his lip. Since I was young, there's never been someone the same age as me who was able to make me treat them as an equal. Hua Yuao humped and stopped looking at him. When words get sour, adding extra words is meaningless. Wang Dong also stopped talking. He suddenly sped up, overtaking Hua Yuao as he used an astonishing speed to run around Shrek Plaza. It had to be said that even though Wang Dong was arrogant, his cultivation truly stood out from the masses. Furthermore, his physical fitness was extremely strong. Once he'd sped up, there was no one from class 1 who could actually catch up to him. At that moment, Zhou Yi had already arrived beside Shrek Plaza. She simply stood there as she calmly watched the students run. Her gaze was quickly attracted to Wang Dong, and her gaze changed slightly before returning to normal. Time quickly passed. As the number of completed laps increased, the breathing of the running students gradually became rougher. The physical fitness and cultivation level of the students was revealed at this moment. Zhou Yi had never said that they were prohibited from using the assistance of Soul Force, so everyone had started using Soul Force to recover their physical strength in order to continue their long-distance running. There were more than 10 people running at the very front of the group. Their speed wasn't slow at all. Of the group, the leader was Wang Dong. Although he'd come out late, he'd managed to catch up to the people who had the most laps completed within an hour. He'd even overtaken them. Just looking at his appearance, he didn't seem to have used that much energy. His speed hadn't decreased at all the entire time. After the people at the front of the class, there was a large group of students. There were at least 70 students within this group, and they all ran at a relatively even speed. Running didn't seem to be too exhausting for them. Looking at their speed, it wouldn't be a problem for them to complete 100 laps within their 2 allotted hours. Behind them were still more than 10 students who'd been left behind in the back. Hua Yuao was amongst this group. For the sake of catching up to the students in front, Hua Yuao had used a very quick speed to start running as soon as he'd started. However, the drain on his physical strength had started increasing as soon as he finished running 20 or so laps. Not only was he the last person in the class, the number of laps that he'd run was even fewer than the others, due to him having started 15 minutes later. More than half of the total time had already passed when Zhou Yi's voice suddenly echoed out in everyone's ears. Speed up and use my location as the finishing point. In the middle of her speaking, Wang Dong had swept past her with a swoosh, becoming the first person to complete the 100 laps. After using an extremely fast speed to finish the 100 laps, Wang Dong's handsome face had also turned rosy. He panted slightly as he slowed his pace, and he finally stopped after he'd walked another lap around the plaza. Gradually, more and more students began to complete their 100 laps after Wang Dong. At this moment, there were still 15 minutes left until the 2 hours were up. After Wang Dong stopped, his gaze quickly landed on Hua Yuao, who was running at the back. He couldn't help but furrow his brow as he muttered to himself, How did I lose to him? Hua Yuao's speed had already become much slower than his starting speed. His school uniform was soaked with sweat, and since his martial soul was a spiritual type martial soul, the help that his soul force provided to his body was smaller than normal. If it weren't for him cultivating the mysterious heaven technique, he would have been in an even worse state. If Hua Yuao had had the full 2 hours to complete the 100 laps, he could have still persevered and completed them, albeit with much difficulty. However, after Zhou Yi delaying him earlier, it was just too difficult for him. Deliberately increasing his speed had substantially drained his physical strength. At this moment, he was 3 laps behind the students next to him, and was still 20 laps away from the 100 laps. Running 20 laps within 15 minutes was something that was nearly impossible for him. Thanks so much for watching this video. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Also leave a comment down below with suggestions on what novels to read.